Hello everybody, my name is Michael, and in today's video what we're going to be doing is this right here. So if that looks interesting to you guys, please carry on and watch the video. And also one more thing before we get into the video, if you enjoy what I do here, please don't forget to leave a like, comment and subscribe. It really helps me out and lets me know you enjoy the video. But with all that out of the way, let's get into that video. Okay, so to start painting up Petyr Baelish here, or Littlefinger, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with his skin. So I'm going to start off with some neutral flesh here, and this is going to be of course for where his flesh is. And since Littlefinger has these nice gloves on, the only place where he has his flesh exposed is his face. So we're just going to go and give him a nice coverage here, making sure that it's nice and even, especially since I have a black primer on here. It's going to take a couple of coats, so don't forget to thin down your paint and use a couple of coats to get that nice smooth coverage. Then once you're happy with those base coats, what we're going to do now is we're going to apply a wash, and this is going to be a flesh wash. For me, I'm going to be using a Reichland flesh shade, but any flesh wash is going to do here, and we want it to of course pull nicely. I'm going to pay a little bit more attention, get a little bit more pooling into the eyes, because with my Song and Ice and Fire miniatures, I haven't actually painted up any of the eyes on the models, so I'm just going to keep that going with all my Song of Ice and Fire models. I think if I started painting some eyes on, it'd look a little weird if I had some with and some without eyes, so just making sure that I get a little bit extra of that wash into those parts. So once that wash is completely dry, what we're going to do is we're going to come in now with some highlights for our skin tones, and for me I'm going to be using cobalt skin to do this. It's just a little bit higher saturation and brighter color than my neutral flesh, so this is going to be a great highlighting spot. So of course I want to highlight the main prominent areas, and that's areas like the forehead and brow, the tip of the nose, a little bit of the cheeks, since we've got them nicely sculpted in there. I want to pick those out as well, so nice and easily do, but of course this is where you want to practice your fine brush control. Okay, so since I'm trying to follow Petyr Baelish pretty accurate here, he is described of course as having black hair with some grey patches in it, but for me, because it's sort of turning grey, for me I'm going to go with, since it's got this nicely sculpted detail with his haircut here, is I'm going to be painting the entirety of the undercut of his hair in the grey, and then I'm going to be coming in with a black over top, or a near black over top, to give him his hair colour, just to really make it simple and easy, because I think if you try to dry brush it or something like that, it would probably look a little bit silly. So that's what I'm going to do, is focus grey on the bottom and then black on the top. Okay, so now we have his hair complete. What we're going to do now is start moving on to the clothing. I'm going to use some Rhinox hide for this. This is a nice dark deep brown, and I'm going to be using this for his pants. Now, one thing I forgot to mention too, when I did his hair and I did the black on top, I also picked out the goatee as well, and I picked that out just really simply with a nice fine point on my brush, since that sculpted detail is so small, but really awesome to have on that miniature. But as you can see here, of course, we just want to be painting the pants, and we're just going for a nice good overall base coat. And since we have that black primer underneath there, it's going to make it nice and dark, and I want it to be nice dark rich brown leather pants. And then there's a whole heap of combinations you can do with the top half of his body here and his clothing got. I was sort of figuring out and trying to think of what I wanted to do with his, but I decided that I'm going to paint the undershirt just a very plain white, and of course I want to go for ivory here, so as close to white as I can get without it being pure white. And reason why I did this is Petyr Baelish is a noble, and he prides himself in his looks and his having his wealth and money, so I wanted to try and show that off by giving him the really sort of nice pristine clothing. So that's why I'm going with a nice white here rather than what I was originally thinking of, which was sort of like another brown or maybe a bluish undercolor of his sort of shirt here. But totally up to you what you want to do here. But like for me, I want to give him that sense of wealth. You know, he's living out in King's Landing, and he can afford, and he has the respect in himself to keep his clothing nice and neat and white. So that's why I decided to go with white. So, and following along that theme with him being respectable and having the money for his clothing, I wanted to make the rest of a part of his clothing match. So the reason why I'm going with a brown here is I just wanted it to be some nice, real fine, probably like some sort of exotic animal sort of leather, or like maybe not exotic animal, but maybe just the super highest quality leather clothing that you can get. So I'm going to go with this nice rigid leather for this, which is sort of like a browny reddish color, and it has a really nice and unique color and a really cool color that I enjoy for leathers. So that's why I want to go with this. I want to show off that he's got wealth and power, and he prides himself in looking and presenting himself super nice and neatly. And of course I want to do this for his gloves and his shirt as well, the sort of overshirt. I want to make it sort of more like leather armor, I guess, because that he's sort of an NTU and he can be used in any army. So I want to make it like this is his traveling clothing for when I recruit him in the game for an army. So he goes out traveling, but he still keeps himself nice and pristine and nice with these sort of leathers, rather than making them sort of clothing. Because if I was going to make the straight clothing, I'd probably go for more of the black in there, make it nice and unique there. You could totally do that, but I want to make it sort of like his traveling leathers, since he can be recruited in any army with him being a neutral hero. Then once we have that picked out, what I'm going to do is I'm going to give him a nice accent color. You could totally do this whatever color you like here, but for me I'm going to go with a purple, as in the books he's described as having sort of a deep purple slash like plum color in his clothing. So I thought that would be nice to reflect here, and this is, I don't really have a plum color, but I do have a nice rich purple, so I'm going to go with purple for myself. And I'm just going to be painting the very top part of his leathers that he's got here, sort of the bit around his neck. You could totally combine this up a little bit differently, because he's got like these nice stripes alongside his armor. You could paint in a little bit more around there, but I want to keep the little bits separate. I'm going to come in with a different color for the trim later on, make that more of a trim than a separation between the colors. So that's why I'm going with these areas just around his neck. So then once I have that painted up, I'm going to come in now with khaki, and this is going to be used to be painting his bag of gold that he's carrying on. He's got a nice little money bag in his hand, since of course he is the master of coin. So nice, quick and easy cover here, making sure that I give it full coverage, and making sure to just pick out the very tip of that bag that's poking out from his hand there. Don't forget that little bit of detail on him as well. So now we've painted up his bag of coin. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to come in with a Stonewall Grey, and this is going to be used for the trimming on his clothing, like I was saying about just before. One also thing too that I painted up between off camera that I forgot to sort of film was I painted up his belt too, and I just gave that an off black color, sort of a very, very dark grey near black. But as you can see here, I've got out my finest point brush, and I'm going through and I'm just trying to skim the edge of the brush along to pick out these nice raised details and this nice sort of trimming around his leather armor that he's wearing here. Now, this could totally be up to you. You could totally do this in one of the colors, or do what I said before in the previous step, whereas you could make the plum color or your purple color or whatever your accent color is, go all the way down and cover up this area in between these little bits of detail I'm picking up. But for me, I wanted to try and push myself a little bit and try to pick out that pinstriping. Then once we have that picked out, I'm going to come in with some metallics, and I'm just going to use a nice gunmetal color here. For me, I'm using this plate mail steel, so just a regular sort of silver color, and I'm just going to go around and pick out the pin he has on him, which is a sort of like own made house symbol. As well as that too, I also want to pick out the little studs on his belt and just a few other little buttons stuff he has on him. Very, very small detail. So again, I'm using my nice thin brush with it. I thought I already had it out for doing the trim, so why not go and pick out those areas like the belt buckles and the little studs and stuff on there as well, making it nice and easy and quick at the same time. Then once we have that complete, what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in with a wash, and this is going to be a black wash. Now I'm going to give the entirety of the miniature a black wash, of course, apart from the face, but I want to give everywhere else a black wash. Now this is optional. I just wanted to darken everything down, including the leathers. You could totally separate this out if you wanted to. You could go with a black wash for everywhere but the leather in his clothing with the brown essentially, and you could go in with a brown wash for that to sort of richen that brown up. But I wanted to just have everything that little bit darker rather than separate it out with a brown and a black. So that's why sort of decision making in behind here. Of course, giving everything a nice overall coverage and making sure we don't get anything pooling in the areas we don't want it to. So just pay a little bit of attention and wick up anything as it's drying in any places you don't want it to. Then once we have that wash completely dry, what I want to do is come back in with our original off-white color, or our ivy in this case, and I want to pick out the highlights and the raised areas of our miniature, because like I said, I want Petyr Baelish to have his nice clean clothing, so I want to come in and pick up the highest points, but I still want a little bit of shadow in there, of course, which is what the wash was for. So it's just a matter of coming in and picking out those highest points. Of course, going to be a little bit tricky with our white here, as it can take a little bit of time to build up if you have sort of a thin white, but just spending that little bit of time and picking out those raised areas, going over it a couple of times if you need to build up that white a little bit more, especially since you're going to have that black wash in there, which can very easily darken everything down. What I did is I made sure that the black wash that was going around the white of the clothing being just a little bit thinner and just wicking it up just before it started drying, so I had a little bit thinner amount on there, especially to try and make sure that it wasn't staining it too much. Then once we have that complete, what I'm going to do now is come back in with our original leather color. In this case it was my rigid leather from Army Painter, and I'm going to use this to pick out, of course, the highlighted areas. Now there's a bunch of other highlights you could pick out in here as well. I think what I ended up by doing off camera, well, not really off camera, I sort of was recording it and the file got corrupted, but I also went around and picked up that trim once again to brighten that back up, and just a few other areas on the model like the metallics, just sort of picking out some areas that we wanted in our highlights. But I had a bit of problem with my camera at this point and I lost a little bit of footage, so sorry about that, but we can go right into those nice glamour shots now and see how it came out in the end, shall we? And with all that completed, we have finally finished painting up Lord Petyr Baelish, aka Littlefinger, from the Song of Ice and Fire miniatures game. So I hope this video has been helpful for you guys, whether you want to follow along with what I did here, or you just want to use this video as some inspiration in painting up your own miniatures. But with all that said, guys, I'd like to thank you all for watching, and I can't wait to see you all in the next video.